Chapter 1 Sickness Supremacy 1. Flower Festival. At night, the lanterns are lit. Both sides of the Mi River in Yanling City are buzzing with people's voices. The long ancient streets are decorated with colorful lanterns, giving them a hazy and mysterious color. Several painted boats float on the water, and the faint sound of singing and dancing is introduced into the night. In addition to the ordinary people watching the excitement, there are many wealthy ladies wearing curtains and hats surrounded by maids and servants on the street, as well as elegant young men who gather together to compose poems and recite poems. Talented men and beauties, admiring lamps and flowers, laughing and chatting. At this time, in the restaurant facing Ms. Hui Bridge, two young men with outstanding appearance and temperament were looking out through the second-floor window, seemingly looking for something. Among them, the young man wearing a red robe embroidered with mysterious patterns looked the most nervous. He was 16 or 17 years old, with delicate eyebrows and smooth skin. He looked like a pampered young man, but his frowned brows seemed to be anxious about something big. In contrast, the young man in dark black clothes sitting opposite him was much calmer. He seemed to have a more mature demeanor than the young man in red. His eyebrows were carved like an axe, his temples were cut like a knife, and he looked very handsome. At this time, I saw him drinking wine and watching his out-of-temperate friend uneasily with interest. When the other side finally let out the 164th sigh of the night, he put down the wine glass helplessly and said, "Little ancestor, if you continue to complain like this, the guards sent by your uncle may find out something, and you'll be forced to question you when you get back. Is it because of a girl from a certain family who is lovesick?" This pink-looking young man in red is none other than Jin Yan, the young master of Chongwei Marquis Mansion, a famous little devil in Yanling. The identity of the young man in Xuanyi across from him is not simple either. His name is Han Mingyuan, and he is the eldest son of Prince Luchen's palace. These two people are very different in personality, but they have been in love since they were young and wanted to wear a pair of pants, which made everyone in the royal family gasp. Today, instead of having fun during the lively festival, they stayed in this small restaurant drinking. If any acquaintances saw it, they would be shocked. Little devil Jean rarely ignored the teasing of his harmful friend, raised his eyes sadly, stared out the window with his chin on his shoulder, and sighed for the 165th time tonight. Han Mingyuan, that's enough. Just before he could continue to complain, Jin Yan's eyebrows suddenly lit up, and he stood up and looked somewhere outside the window in surprise. Han Mingyuan also reacted, and his heart suddenly felt like a hammer. He's back. After the boy in red finished speaking, he turned around and rushed downstairs. The black figure behind him was not far behind. He dropped the pieces of silver and disappeared. At the head of Ms. Hui Bridge, a man and a horse stood quietly next to the stone lions, which seemed incompatible with the lively and prosperous scene of the flower festival. The young man leading the horse is about the age of a weak crown. He is dressed in slender green clothes and has black hair tied with a jade crown. Although he looks simple like a ranger returning from a long distance, he can't conceal the nobility exuding from within. From a distance, he has become a scenery of his own. When he gets closer and sees his face clearly, it is even more amazing. He seemed to be hesitant when he stopped here. The outline of half of his body seemed to be polished by the clear springs of a mountain stream, which was gentle and clear. His eyes were like tufts of paint, narrow and gracefully curved. The slightly upward tail corner always seemed to be smiling. If he was watched quietly, it would be like a breeze blowing on his face, and 1,000 layers of ice could melt instantly. "Brother Muay." Hearing the call, the young man turned around and looked at the young man in red who was rushing towards him with a warm smile. He opened his arms slightly and let him rush in. When he was hugged around his waist and pressed against his chest by the hard little head, which made him breathless, he gently pushed him and said, "Ian, why are you still so frizzy? Get up." "No, I'm not." The young man remained unmoved and continued to lower his head and muttered, "Brother Muay, why don't you go into the restaurant? Yuan and I have been waiting for a long time, but you don't look anxious at all. Don't you want to see us? You've been standing here for a long time. Don't you plan to go? If I don't find you, do you plan to leave?" The young man, who was a little confused by the boy's series of questions, turned his face away. He twitched his lips slightly where no one could see him and patted his back comfortingly as if he was grooming a puppy. "I have already returned to Yanling. Where else can I go? But I only found out after entering the city that today is the Flower Festival. This dress is too casual, so I thought about whether to go back home to clean up before I come to see you and Ayuan." "No need. Brother Mue is good-looking no matter what, better looking than all of them," the young man retorted without hesitation, but his hand still did not let go, and he hugged his waist tightly. "Youth." Han Mingyuan chased after him. "Ahem, little ancestor, get up." Han Mingyuan, who couldn't bear to look directly at him, said even though his face was full of disgust, he still stopped him. The young man who was rescued also breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the young man in Schwani, who was almost the same height as him, and asked with a smile, "How is your health? I brought some wild ginseng with me when I came back this time. I wanted to take it with me when I came to visit. Since we met today, I might as well give it to you first." Han Mingyuan grinned heartily. "My family's fine. Yesterday, they were talking about when you would come back. It would be more pleasing if my cousin gave me this wild ginseng in person. If I go, I will only be annoyed and have to ask more questions about your whereabouts." "That's fine." The young man also smiled. This gentle young man whom Han Mingyuan calls his cousin is Mu Yao, the direct son of Jinbei General Mansion. It is hard to imagine that such a noble son with a temperament that resembles that of a banished immortal is actually a border major general who has been on the battlefield many times. His mother is Princess Hanhua, the eldest sister of the Holy Emperor, who is a biological sister to Jin Yan's mother, Princess Hanfang. Mu Yao, Jin Yan, and Han Mingyuan are actually cousins with royal blood. In recent years, Tata people have been harassed several times. General Jinbei and his son were stationed at the border in person. Princess Hanhua was even more like a woman, so she simply moved most of the general's residence directly to the border town and took root. This way, her husband and son would not be disturbed from leading the army, and the family could see each other often. After winning several battles, he has obeyed Tartus teachings and no longer dares to be arrogant. This time Mu Yao was ordered to return to Beijing to report on his duties. When the border is reorganized and completed, General Jinbei will also bring his wife to move the general's palace back. Seeing the two of them chatting happily, Jin Zayamoto, who felt that he had been left out, curled his lips and said aggrievedly, "Brother Mue only asks Ayuan and doesn't care about me." Mu Yao skillfully smoothed his hair again, raised his eyebrows, and said, "Although you are here with me, your heart has already flown to nowhere, right? Today is the festival, so you don't have any plans with those good brothers?" How could it not be? Jin Yan's eyes lit up and he said proudly, "Today Changchun Tower specially held a 100 flowers competition. All the girls performed performances to compete for the flower name, and then the guests present voted. A seat is hard to find. But don't worry, brother, I saved the ticket for you early. Fortunately, I returned in time today. Let's go there quickly." So why is he traveling day and night like this? What is the urgent matter mentioned in the letter? Although the general's mansion was now empty and uninteresting, Mu Yao still preferred to go back to the mansion and lie down instead of visiting a brothel. Just as he was about to find a reason to refuse, he suddenly heard a noise behind him. Turning around, he saw a guard riding a horse, with a maid behind him, rushing out of the crowd, waving his whip and shouting, "Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" Mu Yao frowned slightly when he saw the scene. It was already dark now, and there were many people out to admire the lanterns. Such a collision would easily injure pedestrians. But when I saw the maid behind the guard crying hysterically as if the sky was falling, I couldn't help but twitch the corners of my eyes, not knowing how to react. "Hey, isn't it the little maid from Chu Jiaojiao's family? She's crying like this. She has the same character as her master." Jin Yan recognized it with sharp eyes and then chuckled. "What? Mu Yao was stunned and narrowed his eyes to take a closer look. Maybe my cousin doesn't remember. That person is Chu Qiao's personal maid. I don't know what happened to be so panicked. Although Han Mingyuan didn't have a good impression of Chu Qiao, he saw that something was wrong, so he couldn't ignore it because he had known her since childhood. He was about to send someone over to ask when he looked up and saw that the cyan figure beside him had already got on his horse and chased after him with a whip. Is this Grand Master's mansion Li Huahua head? When it came to the name, Mu Yaozong had complained about it many times in his heart, but he still paused when he called it out in public, feeling a sense of shame. Hiccup. Stop. I think someone called me. The maid, who was sitting on the horse and crying vigorously, patted the guard, rubbed her eyes, and looked back. Under the glow of the fiery red lanterns, a young man in green came lapping his horse. His black hair swept in front of him, and he stood erect and tall. Li Huahua was first dazzled by this immortal temperament and was stunned when she saw the appearance of the person. Then she let out an ouch and pointed at him and said in surprise, "Young General Mu? Is it young General Mu?" This voice attracted a lot of attention, and Mu Yao was sure that she was really the little maid next to that girl. After 4 years of not seeing each other, the changes have been really big. Why are you so panicked? He patiently asked in a gentle voice, but the maid became even more panicked. She wrinkled her face and was about to cry again. "It's my young lady. Miss, she went to Fuyuan Temple today to hang paper cuts. When she came back, the horse was suddenly frightened outside the city. Miss fell down in the carriage and had heart palpitations, and then the medicine disappeared for some reason. The slave girl rushed back to get the medicine. I don't know how she's doing." "Where's the medicine?" "It's here, slave. Go back and talk as we walk." Mu Yao glanced at the guard, and the 2 horses, one behind the other, quickly ran out of the city. The forgotten little devil Jean and Prince Han. Han Mingyuan looked at Jean Yen, who had an uncertain expression, and pursed his lips. Jean Yen gritted his teeth and touched the 3 Changchun Tower seat tickets placed close to his chest, feeling the blood in his heart dripping from his hand. In the end, he snatched the horse from the guards of the house, and while cursing, "Chu Jiao must die a good death," he chased them in the opposite direction of Changchun Tower. Han Mingyuan shook his head, got on his horse, and followed. As he drove faster and faster all the way, Mu Yao asked Li Huahua about Chu Qiao's situation intermittently. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was already so squeamish, so why did he keep his body getting worse and worse? Sitting on the horse, Li Huahua saw that General Mu was also coming, and her heart gradually calmed down. After talking more, I naturally became more courageous. After thinking about it, I still said coyly, "General Mu, you should call your slave Li Shu in the future." "Huh? Your name is not Li Huahua." Mu Yao's face changed slightly, remembering the suffocating feeling of being forced by someone to call this name when he was young, and he could hardly support the gentle and gentleman's appearance. No. Lawawa hesitated and explained in a low voice. Lawawa is the nickname given to the slave by the young lady. The young lady said that the slave is as beautiful as a flower, so it is most suitable to call her Huahua. However, some people outside do not know how to appreciate it. In order to accommodate them, the slave is called Li Shu outside. Shu also means beauty. The young lady said that it can be used with a little force. It turns out that she also knows that the name Huahua cannot be pronounced. Mu Yao's face was numb. Except for the young lady, only the madam knows the nickname slave. Now, including you, the general, there are 3 people in total. Li Huahua continued to mutter. The young lady said, "The nickname is given to one's own people. There can't be too many people who know it. There shouldn't be too many people now. General, please don't tell others." Humph. Lawawa. Isn't this familiar, coquettish tone something that only my own lady often talks about? Why did you hear it just now? Or from? He quietly glanced at the young man in green shirt beside him. He was still as gentle as jade, extremely handsome and refined. Auditory hallucinations. I must have had auditory hallucinations just now. Cack. Li Huahua patted her small chest and didn't dare to say anything anymore. The group of people soon saw the carriage parked there by the woods outside the city. At this time, the frightened horse was already safe and was wagging its tail leisurely. Li Huahua jumped off her horse and ran towards the carriage while calling, "Miss, I'm back. Major General Mu is back too." After waiting for a while, no one answered. "Little miss?" Li Huahua's voice was filled with nervousness, and she ran towards this side faster. Chu Qiao gradually regained consciousness from the darkness and moved slightly. Immediately afterwards, the sudden sharp pain in her chest made her give up thinking. She could only lean on the cushions in the carriage and breathe lightly. Her fingertips were still gripping the satin seat surface tightly. Several very conspicuous blood marks had been scratched on it, which showed how much effort she had just used. Although she didn't have the energy to analyze the current situation, she subconsciously understood that the original owner had passed away. After experiencing severe pain and struggling to survive, he still left unwillingly. The despair in her heart had not dissipated with the original owner, making Chu Qiao feel even more depressed. When Mu Yao opened the car curtain, the scene in front of him took his breath away, and his dark eyes flashed slightly. The slender and weak woman was lying on the soft cushion. Her dark hair was flowing down, covering most of her pale face. Her straight nose was slightly red, and a lotus arm stuck out of her sleeve. Her fingernails were cracked, but she still clung to the back of a seat. The blood stains were shocking. It was obviously fragile and vulnerable, but there was a fierceness about it, a feeling that was both strange and familiar, making his heart suddenly feel like he was being stabbed by something. Mu Yao leaned forward and got into the car, hugged Chu Qiao into his arms, carefully opened her fingers, and held them in his big palms to prevent her from moving any more. He took the medicine from Li Huahua, put it to his nose, and smelled it. Seeing that it was no different from before, he poured 2 pills and fed them to Chu Qiao's mouth. "Open your mouth." Chu Qiao felt someone's touch and frowned. He fluttered his eyelashes and tried to focus on the man in front of him. Slanted eyebrows, starry eyes, straight nose, thin lips, handsome appearance. Except for the extra long hair, it was as if the person in her memory had come to her alive again. At this moment, she suddenly felt like crying. "Buckwheat, don't cry, it won't hurt after taking the medicine." Looking at the red eyes of the woman in his arms, Mu Yao felt that his heart was being tugged, and he unconsciously softened his voice to coax her. Chu Qiao frowned and said sullenly. She swallowed the pill with his hand, and her face wrinkled even tighter. But so bitter." The top of the hair was touched comfortingly, and the tip of the nose was filled with a familiar smell, which made people want to lean in again. The pain in his heart gradually subsided a lot, and the fatigue caused by the first time traveling suddenly came over him. Chu Qiao finally fell asleep slowly in his arms, but his fingers quietly caught a corner of his clothes. "Fortunately, I found you in this strange world." Chapter 2, The Supremacy of 6 Children 2. Jin Yan and Han Mingyuan also chased after them, standing outside the carriage and kicking stones idly. The little devil's eyes were full of disdain and ridicule. After waiting for a long time, they saw the little maid go in with red eyes and come out crying. The 2 of them couldn't help but feel anxious. Jin Yan couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong with Chu Jiaojiao?" He always disliked Chu Qiao's pampering, so he just gave her this nickname, which made her scream loudly since she was little. Li Huahua didn't like the 2 young men very much because of her status as a young lady. She wiped away her tears and walked around to mutter a few words to the guards. Then she saw the guards all getting ready and mounting their horses, protecting the carriage in the middle, and started to drive slowly. Jin Yan and Amp, Han Mingyuan. Seeing that the convoy was about to leave, Han Mingyuan, who was left behind again, turned to look at the boy in red and saw him gritting his teeth. "Chu Jiaojiao." "Forget it. Let's go to Changchun Tower." "Where are you going to Changchun Tower?" Didn't you see that Brother Mue is still on her carriage? Han Mingyuan silently cursed in his heart that the person was not kidnapped, but he had no choice but to accept his fate and continue to chase him. After taking the medicine, Chu Qiao seemed to have fallen asleep peacefully, but in fact her consciousness awakened in a transparent space. What appeared in front of her was a round ball. She remembered that this was the clone assigned to her by the system when she agreed to time travel. At that time, she was wearing an isolation gown and a mask, standing beside the hospital bed and looking at the man with various instruments inserted in a daze. She couldn't figure out why the person who suddenly went abroad for 2 years without saying a word would be in such a scene when they met again. During this period, they were still in contact while playing online games. Although they thought his attitude was a bit strange, they didn't pay much attention to it. It wasn't until she heard from his friend that he had recently had a close relationship with a certain woman that she was stunned for a moment, and then it suddenly dawned on her. It turns out that I have a girlfriend. No wonder I sometimes have a nonchalant attitude when talking to her online. Is it to avoid suspicion? In fact, there is no need. Although they were childhood sweethearts who grew up together and were often teased jokingly when they were in school, the two of them never acted beyond their distance. There is more than enough intimacy, not enough ambiguity. Chu Qiao was a little disappointed for a moment, but after thinking about it carefully, Mu Yao was actually right to do this. She comforted herself like this and never played the game again. After that, Mu Yao disappeared from the world. She worried about asking his friends, but she was deeply impressed by the tangled and aggrieved expressions on their faces, but she didn't actually ask anything. When I received news from Mu Yao again, I learned that he was unconscious at home and was sent to the intensive care unit. Chu Qiao said hello to his roommate and flew directly to country, Y, where he was. Countless speculations along the way were all blank the moment he saw him. She bit her lip and wanted to touch his hand, but the moment she touched it, a voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Hello, host. Congratulations on activating the wish fulfillment system. B and hashtag 119 and hashtag 119 and hashtag 119 and hashtag 46 and hashtag 115 and hashtag 104 and hashtag 117 and hashtag 107 and hashtag 101 and hashtag 98 and hashtag 97 and hashtag 46 and hashtag 99 and hashtag 111 and hashtag 109/B. Chu Qiao. The experience of being a goddess since childhood told her that she must not speak first at this time, so as not to expose her ignorance and panic. Please don't panic, host. This system only sends the strong fluctuations in the host's wishes and successfully locked in. Goddess Chu, who felt that she had been seen through for a second, decided to change her approach and take the initiative. Then, do you know why Mu Yao fell into coma? Of course, as a competent system, it is necessary to be able to share the host's worries. The system seemed to cough slightly and explained, Mu Yao has the rare fate of encountering a scheming scumbag. In every life, he will be involuntarily attracted to the destined daughter, and ultimately, he will not die well. Although he didn't want to believe what the system said that came out of nowhere, he still believed it for some reason. Chu Qiao felt a burst of fire in his heart. He changed his usual gentle image and criticized, "What a girl of destiny. He is a good person and has his own ideas. Even if he likes who he likes, it is his own decision. Why do you want to curse him?" System CAC, who had been innocently shot, still said in a responsible and flattering tone, "Well, in fact, Mu Yao's attracted behavior was involuntary. No matter what he thought, he would definitely choose fate, ahem, the woman who is destined to betray him." Although Chu Qiao was still not convinced, he still calmed down and asked, "You mean Mu Yao's current situation is also related to the destined daughter?" "Yes. To be precise, the coma was caused by Mu Yao's strong awareness of getting rid of the destined daughter in this life and the mental overdraft caused by forcibly exercising self-control." After the system finished speaking, he muttered to himself, "I don't know why. I have accepted my fate in so many lives before, so why did I suddenly react so aggressively? It's really rare for someone to be so cruel to themselves. Chu Qiao didn't hear this sentence. She seemed to have received a huge blow. She seemed to have lost her soul, which shocked the system. Host? Host adult. Huh. Chu Qiao came back to his senses, his eyes full of complexity. What's the problem, Master Host? Yes, there is one. Chu Qiao looked at the man on the hospital bed again, his moist and bright eyes gradually overflowing with guilt and anxiety. Mu Yao's destined daughter in this life is she me? After listening to the system's explanation, her heart sank. Mu Yao's appearance is extremely outstanding, and he is naturally very popular. Unlike ordinary handsome men who are handsome and carefree, his eyes are as deep and gentle as ink, and his facial features are gentle and clear as if they were polished by clear mountain springs. The elegant and gentlemanly air exuding from within is very attractive no matter where he is in the noisy modern society. But since he was a child, except for the girlfriend he heard about now, he has never been close to any girl. The one he has the closest relationship with is her. Accompanying her in whatever she wants to do and obeying her every word, does this count as being involuntarily attracted to her? Then I contacted him about his sudden departure abroad without saying a word, and his recent indifference towards him. Mu Yao may have wanted to forcefully stay away from her for true love, but he ended up like this. Thinking of this, Chu Qiao's eyes turned red with sadness. Seeing that the system remained silent as a default, she opened her mouth and said, I started. Her voice choked, and she couldn't get out the rest of the sentence. She wanted to say that she really never thought about betraying or hurting Mu Yao. But it feels weird. Tears fell down and hit the back of Mu Yao's hand, but he still didn't react. Host! The voice of the system suddenly sounded again, sounding extremely forced. He coughed twice before continuing. Host, you are overthinking. Mu Yao's destined daughter is not you. It's not me. After hearing the news, Chu Qiao's mood suddenly went up and down. He couldn't tell whether he was relieved or inexplicably a little bit disappointed. No! The system took a deep breath, but although the host is not the daughter of destiny, it can help Mu Yao change his destiny. Is the host willing? Yes. The system, who was startled by the host's cheerfulness, paused and continued to explain. The specific method actually sounds very simple. The host needs to travel to every world that Mu Yao has been reincarnated in to help him stay away from the destined daughter. As long as he uses his own willpower to not be with the destined daughter throughout his life, the world will be considered a success. When the host completes all the worlds, Mu Yao, who is now lying on the hospital bed, will wake up and completely get rid of this fate. How many worlds will it take? Chu Qiao frowned and looked at Mu Yao with some worry. His body may not be able to wait too long. Host, don't worry, because of the time difference. When you start to travel, nothing in this world will change. Hearing this, Chu Qiao breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't care much about Mu Yao's past life. She just felt that she didn't exist at that time, so to her she was just a stranger in a strange world. All she cared about was the person lying in front of her now. System, I agree to what you said. The host's wish has been received and matching is in progress. Chu Qiao felt a gentle force running through her body from her mind, and then she saw a round ball floating in the air, and it swooped into her arms as if she had been sensed. The system clone matching is completed. Because it is a newborn clone, it is not yet able to communicate verbally with the host. However, as long as the host completes the world task to a high degree, the tacit understanding with the clone will increase, and one day it will speak. Then, Chu Qiao's vision began to blur, and his consciousness gradually dissipated. In the haze, he heard the sound of the system as if coming from the distant sky. So, I wish the host and clone all the best. First world, teleportation begins. Chu Qiao was almost hurt to death when he first arrived in this world. It was only now that he was in a transparent space that he really had the energy to observe this round system clone. She stretched out her hand and made a tentative move. The system ball seemed to have received great encouragement. It swayed from a shy distance before suddenly swooping into her arms and even arched to please her. "Hey!" Chu Qiao chuckled at the trouble, rubbed it, held it in the palm of his hand, and looked at it. "Don't make trouble. Tell me about the situation in this world first." The system ball could not speak, but Chu Qiao suddenly felt her brain wave moving, and a force poured into her mind gently and step by step. The huge amount of information made her stunned for a moment, and then she was really stunned. After a long while, he held the system ball and said quietly, "What kind of evil did Mu Yao in this life have committed?" Chapter 3, Sickness Supremacy 3. Mu Yao's destined daughter in this life is Changchun Tower's number Wanya Ge. If the world developed in the past, Mu Yao would have gone to Changchun Tower with Jin Yan and Han Mingyuan tonight and witnessed how this Yage girl won the 100 Flowers competition with her outstanding pipa and singing voice and became the king of flowers peony. From then on, little devil Jin was fascinated by Miss Yage and ran to Changchun Tower every now and then, not forgetting to bring his good brother Mu Yao and good gay friend Han Mingyuan with him. After going back and forth, Mu Yao was also moved by this strong woman who lived in a brothel but was unconventional, and he would help her to some extent. It would be fine if she was just a poor brothel girl, but in fact, her true identity was the enemy princess whose country was destroyed by Dian, and the culprit who caused the destruction of her country and family was none other than the uncle of General Mu, who was sitting in front of her. When he saw this, Chu Qiao no longer knew how to describe his extremely embarrassed expression. For what Uncle Mu Yao committed? Why didn't he seek revenge from his uncle instead of targeting Mu Yao? "Princess, Mu Yao was still a child when your country was destroyed." "Yage? No. She should be called Princess Wanya. Tried every means to seduce General Mu with the purpose of killing him with her own hands in revenge. Finally, in a deserted forest, Princess Wanya used her kidnapping as bait and set a trap with her lover to brutally kill Mu Yao. At the end of the story, the great revenge was avenged. The princess and her lover lived a happy life as ordinary people wandering around the world." Chu Qiao stood in the transparent space, reviewed the bloody plot again, and silently complained, "Is this really not the world, but the real experience of Mu Yao?" The system ball hung in front of Chu Qiao, rolling back and forth, nodding. Alas, Chu Qiao felt very complicated. At this time, he saw a line of words appearing on the light screen on the chest of the system ball. World difficulty, level F. You mean this is actually a very simple world? Continue rolling back and forth. After clarifying the basic direction of the world, Chu Qiao no longer struggled too much. Anyway, she and everyone are here, so she won't let her little bamboo horse suffer like this again. His consciousness gradually withdrew from the transparent space, and when he opened his eyes, what caught his eyes was a strong and beautiful mandible, and further up, his thin lips were not smiling but slightly raised. The bridge of his nose was straight, and a pair of black eyes were slightly closed, covered by very long eyelashes. As if he felt someone watching him, Mu Yao lowered his head slightly, looked at her for a moment, raised the corner of his lips, and said warmly, "You haven't slept for long, but why do you feel uncomfortable?" Chu Qiao didn't speak, just looked at him curiously with his eyes open, until Mu Yao looked away, leaving only the redness of his ears that couldn't be hidden. This man looked exactly like the Mu Yao he was familiar with, and even his ink-like temperament was exactly the same. It was obviously the first time we met, but I didn't feel any strangeness at all. Even now that I was lying in his arms, I didn't feel weird at all. "Mu Yao," Chu Qiao called softly, his voice soft and playful, like a feather sweeping into his ears. Mu Yao's heart moved, and he said, then turned his head back, pretending to be calm. When he saw her curious eyes, he couldn't help showing a helpless look, patted the top of her hair gently, and said, "Why, we haven't recognized each other since we haven't seen each other for just a few years." For years gone be, and hashtag 119, and hashtag 119, and hashtag 119, and hashtag 46, and hashtag 115, and hashtag 104, and hashtag 117, and hashtag 107, and hashtag 101, and hashtag 98, and hashtag 97, and hashtag 46, and hashtag 99, and hashtag 111, and hashtag 109/B. Chu Qiao blurted out, "Since inheriting this body, all the memories of the original owner have been completely integrated with her, and even the inner personality and habits have been directly affected a lot." Ignoring Mu Yao's slight stupor, she slowly stood up, straightened her hair and clothes, and moved to the other side. When she heard the bustle of people outside, she couldn't help but lift a corner of the curtain. Suddenly, the lively scene outside burst in, as if the door to another world had been opened. At this time, they had entered the city and returned to the place celebrating the flower festival by the Mizhui River. People were coming and going, lanterns were clustered around, and it was lively. Chu Qiao couldn't help but feel a little more interested in his eyes. "Like it? Do you want to come down for a walk?" Mu Yao's deep magnetic voice came from behind. He was about to nod quickly, but suddenly he restrained himself halfway and turned into a frown, lowered his eyes, and gently shook his head. "There are a lot of people, so I don't want to go there." Mu Yao was silent, and soon a trace of annoyance flashed in his eyes, and he secretly cursed himself for being careless. Because of Chu Qiao's health, the Grand Master's wife never allowed her to go to crowded places. Even if she liked it, she had to be prepared in case of dangerous situations such as being crowded or bored. That's why Chu Qiao chose to go out of the city during the flower festival to hang paper cuts in Fuyuan Temple, where there are relatively few people. Isn't it considered a festival? Looking at Mu Yao's expression, he knew that he must have thought of something great, but Chu Qiao didn't say much. She is now becoming more and more integrated with the original owner's body. In the past, Goddess Chu had a very good body and her life was not very delicate, but now she feels a little tired after just sitting for a while. She wishes she could put a few layers of soft cushions behind her so that her delicate skin will not be irritated. As soon as she turned around and moved, someone obediently placed 2 soft cushions for her, as if she was familiar with the job. Chu Qiao leaned forward and let out a sigh of relief, then became more interested in chatting with him. "Come back in time for the flower festival. Where are you planning to go tonight?" "Well, I didn't have any arrangements. I just happened to meet them too at the gate of the city." "It's true," Mu Yao said seriously. "Oh, well, after I send you back, I'm going back to the general's mansion." Dong, dong, dong. At this time, a sound of knocking on the car wall suddenly came from the side of the ear, causing both of them to look there. "Brother Mu, is Chu Jiaojiao awake? Anyway, she has entered the city, so let her go back by herself. We still have time to rush to Chongqing Tower." Under Chu Qiao's half-smiling gaze, Mu Yao continued to maintain a serious face and even furrowed his handsome eyebrows. He coughed lightly, and just as he was about to explain something, he heard several more dong-dong-dong sounds coming from the car wall. The next moment, Chu Qiao's eyes flashed, and he saw a long arm reaching out to slap the car curtain, and the end of the curtain almost hit Jean Yan's face that had just come over. Ouch! Little Devil Jean hurriedly drove his horse back a few steps, looking aggrieved. Unexpectedly, he met a pair of piercing deep eyes, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. Mu Yao looked at him and said earnestly, "Ayan, you are not young anymore. Aunt Hanfang spoils you, but you must not indulge yourself. Now that I am back too, since you call me brother, brother has the responsibility to keep you under control." Jean Yan, W. Jean Yan opened his mouth, but under the pressure of Mu Yao's eyes, no word came out. Turning his head to look to the other side, he saw that Chu Jiaojiao had woken up at some point and was leaning on him comfortably to watch his jokes. He suddenly felt sullen and glared at her, but was quickly glared back by someone who had been staring at him. After being aggrieved, Jin Yan was still not willing to be pushed back by Chu Qiao, so he bared his teeth at her, only to find that she was smiling at them delicately, tenderly, and weakly. Although she was still the same pampered persona as before, for some reason, this time she didn't have the same eye-hide-top-of-eyes look that was so flattering. Thinking about what the little maid told her about her illness just now, he also knew that this time it might not be half as fake as before. Looking at her pale and weak look, young Master Jin decided that this time he would be kind and not argue with her. Seeing that Jin Yan didn't make any more trouble, Mu Yao breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He noticed that Chu Qiao was in much better spirits now, so he suggested in a gentle voice, "What kind of lantern does Qiao Qiao like? I'll get one for you." Chu Qiao blinked. "Can you still guess lantern riddles?" The corner of Mu Yao's mouth twitched. Could it be that Qiao Qiao thought that my brother was just a rough man who knew how to wield a sword and a stick? He knew that Mu Yao's nature was not exactly as gentle and uncontroversial as he seemed on the outside, and there was often drama hidden inside. On the surface, he was still listening patiently to some long speeches, but in his heart, he no longer seemed so calm. Outsiders have never noticed all this. Only